and then he was lifted up. First, they took him to a parallel universe just to prevent people from seeing him. And then he was taken onto their spaceship. And then he visited another planet before reaching their planet, which is called Theoba.
Hello, passionate listeners and watchers. Welcome to Passion Harvest. I am Luisa, your host. Thank you so much for joining me wherever you are in the world. Our guest today is Samuel Chong. Alien abduction, life-changing encounters, and the meaning of life. The Thiaoouba Prophecy is a book written by Michael Desmarquet, where he describes how he was abducted by very kind and attractive 8-foot humanoid aliens and taken to their advanced planet. He also describes the meaning of the Easter Island statue, Jesus Christ, parallel universes, spiritual evolution, the Bermuda Triangle, and time travel. Samuel Chong had a life-changing encounter when he read the book. He met the author, which resulted in a close working relationship that eventually led to the Chinese publication. This is his story and this is his passion. Samuel, welcome to Passion Harvest.
I'm glad to be here.
It's such a fascinating book and incredibly interesting. I know you had a life-changing encounter in part when you read that book. Do you mind just briefly sharing that with the audience, what you experienced?
Yes, my life actually changed because of the book. Let me tell something about the history. I was very curious about what I was going to be doing in my life. So I went to several psychics, especially 2 psychics in the United States. And they all tell me that I would be working for a book of significance. At that time, I haven't really had a chance. I really hadn't thought about having a book to be my life mission. And it was very interesting because at that time, I didn't really think of any book of significance, not even the Bible, because I really didn't believe in the Bible. So I was questioning them, what kind of book would that be? A book of significance? A book of significance, according to the psychics? That was a very curious question to me. So accidentally, in about 2014, I accidentally found the book on Amazon. At that time, the title was Abduction to the Ninth Planet. I was intentionally looking for information from extraterrestrials because I was thinking if we want to advance much faster, we can get helpful information from ETs that have advanced civilization. So I searched on Amazon, I found that book, I borrowed it from the library, being a frugal person myself, and I couldn't put it down after reading it, especially the chapter on who is Christ, because it made total sense to me. It connects all the dots of the stories in the Bible. So I decided to pay a visit to the author because in the postscript of the book, it mentions that there are more incredible things that the author was not allowed to write in the book. So that caused me a lot of curiosity. I was thinking this book is incredible enough, and what's more incredible about it that the author wasn't allowed to write in the book. So I visited Vietnam from Los Angeles, which was a large investment for me. And the second time, I mean, I didn't know where the author was living at that time. I just know the city. I knew the city, but not the exact address. So I tried and located him, and then there I was, and then now I'm on a mission to spread the messages in the book because I think it's important for people to know what life is about.
Well, thank you for sharing that brief background. Just for the audience that don't know, the author, Michael, has passed or transitioned from this physical incarnation. So for those that haven't read the book, what is it and what's it about?
So it's about Michael Desmarquet, the author's personal experience of being taken by this group of beautiful ETs to their planet for 9 days and then came back. So he was informed about a lot of things that I was curious about. For example, who built the Great Pyramid and for what purposes? What happened in the Bermuda Triangle? And what about the stories in the Bible? And what about the meaning of life? Is there really reincarnation, or is it really like life after death? So a lot of questions are answered in this book, and especially it talks about the meaning of life, which is very, very significant. It matches a lot of the other stories or researches done by medical doctors or psychologists in the US, saying that there is a life reveal process after the passing of a person. And then there is also reincarnation as well. And also, when one encounters life challenges, one really should look inside of him or herself and not to follow a specific or organized religion.
Thank you. So, Michael was abducted by aliens. Where was he, and how did this take place?
He didn't know that would happen. I mean, just one night in the middle of the night, he woke up and then he just didn't know why. He wrote a note to his wife. I would be gone for 10 days and there's absolutely no need to worry about me. And then he walked outside of his house and then he was lifted up. Um, First, they took him to a parallel universe just to prevent people from seeing him. And then he was taken onto their spaceship. And then he visited another planet before reaching their planet, which is called Theoba.
Hence the name of the book. And they were friendly extraterrestrials, and they apparently showed him all these incredible universal truths that everyone searches for.
Yes, they're incredibly beautiful and very nice and loving people. He felt a lot of love from them, unconditional love, and also he was told or informed a lot of interesting facts about ancient histories and also different events that happened in our past. And specifically, they also took him to his previous lives, so he saw his past lives and actually experienced them.
How incredible. Why, I've got some questions about the book. How does he detail Jesus Christ?
Well, according to the Theobans, Jesus, the one who can perform miracles, and is actually someone sent by them. But there is actually another Jesus who was born out of Virgin Mary, and he was a very smart and spiritual person, but he couldn't perform miracles. And the Jesus born from Virgin Mary actually went to India. And then after going through China, he died in Japan. So there's a tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan. So that's the Jesus who couldn't perform miracles. The Jesus Christ who could perform miracles was actually a ET from Theoba. They actually made a body of Jesus, which looked like the Jesus who died in Japan. And then they went into the body, and then because they didn't, they know everything, they know how to, they have the knowledge of performing miracles. So they were able to show the people that he was actually someone very special, and he could preach the messages to the people. The main messages that Christ was trying to preach was spirituality and love. He resurrected 3 days after being put to death on the cross, just to show people that there is life after death and there is reincarnation.
Very interesting. And what did the Theobans say about alien contact? Are they in contact with humans all the time?
They have been in contact with us in the ancient past. For example, they helped a group of people in Africa because at that time, a lot of the organized religions were trying to lead the people to a moral decay. And so they contacted them and sent a dream to one of the leading the head priest of that group of people. They also helped us to grow spiritually by destroying the two cities recorded in the Bible, the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, because according to them, the cities were actually, the people in the two cities were setting a very bad example to the people who were in contact with them. I researched more about the people in the two cities. It was not about Sodom, it was about how the people in the two cities treated the people who were nice to others, who were trying to help others. They really punished the people who were trying to help the poor. So it's like when I now think about it, the people in the two cities were setting a very bad example in the sense that they're like a cancer cell. They're trying to bring people who were in contact with them to a moral decay. So that's why this group of ETs they decided to destroy the two cities. So they also led Moses out of Egypt. And that was recorded in the Old Testament in the Bible. And also Jesus as well. They sent Jesus to us and to show us the way. They also intervened during World War II, helping the U.S. to develop the atomic bomb much faster than Germany, because Germany, according to them, was developing atomic bomb as well. And they thought that by helping the U.S., the number of deaths would be reduced by about 2/3 or so. So they actually sided with the U.S. because they think that the U.S. government was trying to help people, was more sincere than the other countries. So they've been really helping us throughout history. It really matches a lot of historical records.
Interesting. So from the account, Michael's accounts, are the Theobans in some sense watching us all the time and supporting us?
Yes, they have been guiding us, supporting us in a very indirect way most of the times, because they believe that it's never helpful to serve the meal on a plate. It's like parents, like trying to help the children to learn mathematical problems. They don't just give out the answers directly. They help them to understand the concepts, how to solve the problems. So this using like similarly, they're trying to teach us the meaning of life, what we should do about in our lives, and how to live a good life, and to gain spiritual lessons, and to really take the most advantages out of our physical life.
You probably just answered it, but what is the meaning of life according to the book?
According to the book, meaning of life is actually a very valuable lesson. It's a learning experience. The purpose of life is to grow spiritually. So we have been focusing too much on the material aspect of the life, most of the people, and people have been paying less attention to the spiritual aspects. But when a person dies, he or she wouldn't be able to take any material things with him or her. Like Napoleon, he conquered almost the entire Europe, but when he died, he couldn't bring anything with him. So we gain the purpose through our physical body, we gain spiritual lessons. And then after we pass away, there's a life review process. So we are able to reveal what we did in our entire life, and we could feel how everyone else felt when we acted in a certain way, whether good or bad. And then we evaluate how we did ourselves. We actually, there's no one else who would judge us but ourselves.
And after that process, I mean, I'm thinking in human terms of time and linear. It's not linear. What happens? Are we then reincarnated again?
And then we decide whether to take another life or not.
We have a choice.
We have a choice whether to take another. Like we actually have a preview process as well. So we preview what's going to happen in our next life, and then we decide whether to take that or not. So this is like signing a contract. We have the choice of taking it or not.
And why, many people ask this question, why did we forget? Some say it's the veils put upon us. Why did we forget that we are spirit?
According to this book, we do forget when we reincarnate, because everyone has to pass the river of oblivion. If we knew what's going to happen in our life, for example, at the age of 45, I would be crippled, then it would be very, very difficult for me to really take that lesson well and to continue the life. I would be discouraged. Oh, I knew that I would be crippled. Then what's the use of continuing this life? I would be strongly discouraged. So that's the explanation given in the book, and that's actually the other reason. That's the reason that the Jesus born from Virgin Mary couldn't perform miracles, because although he was very spiritual, highly evolved, when he reincarnated into the womb of Virgin Mary, he forgot everything. He forgot how he could perform all the miracles, because he also went through the river of oblivion, the river of forgetfulness, because he just it's just a universal law. Everyone has to pass through that forgetful river.
Interesting. And according to the Theobians, I think you pronounced it.
Yes.
Is there an end point after we reach some sort of spiritual evolution? Is there an ending, or is it a continual, everlasting cycle?
Yes, there is. Well, according to them, there are 9 different categories of planets in the universe. We are on category 1, and they're on category 9. And they're the highest level, so they have the role of being a guardian or watcher to us, guiding us to the right path. And when there are 7 Tauras, or like on their planet, which are like senior people, the wise people, and they mentioned that when they pass the 9th level, they they rejoin the ether, which is God, who created the whole universe and all the planets and stars. So they on Theoba, the category 9 planet, they are highly evolved physically and spiritually as well, in the sense that they look forever young at the age of 30. They don't age at all. They can live forever, and they're like in a constant happiness. But according to the 7 senior people, it's not the ultimate end yet, because after the 9th planet, if they want to rejoin God or the ether, they could, and they would feel more pleasantry or happiness than living on the 9th category planet. So it's the higher level than the 9th planet is to rejoin God.
Gosh, it's just incredibly interesting. I mean, this wealth of information and his experience. I'll ask you some other questions. I have to ask this one, the Bermuda Triangle. What is that, according to the Theobians?
According to them, ships and planes did disappear in the Bermuda Triangle. That's a fact. What happened was that they went through like a warp or like a portal into a parallel universe. And they got sucked into that because they were near that portal or the warp. In the parallel universe, time stops and no one feels the pain. It's just the fact. It's very strange fact. People like they say that it's really hard to understand, but this is what really happening in the parallel universe. It makes me think about the missing 411 cases documented by David Paulides. There are many people each year that went missing in the U.S. national parks, and he documented a lot of strange cases in which people just vanish. And I think that could be a reason or explanation for some of his cases in which the people who were hiking on the hills or mountains got sucked into the parallel universe. Because when you think about it, the parallel universe, they're like spheres floating around in certain areas or space, and the people who went missing were frequently on a very high altitude. And it matches a lot of the descriptions in the book too, because according to David Paulides, some of them really like when they found a corpse, they found that they were like seriously injured. That they did a lot of strange things as if they didn't really feel the pain.
Interesting. So, according to you, a parallel universe is a sphere of timelessness in some way. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the author actually went into the parallel universe.
Yes, you mentioned that. Yeah.
And he saw people from the medieval times and also the savages, people who couldn't communicate in modern languages.
Once an individual is in a parallel universe, can they get out?
If they really knew how to get out, they could get out. But most of the people didn't know what happened. They just they didn't think about parallel. They have no knowledge, no information about the parallel universe. They sometimes they get out accidentally. David Paulides in his books documented some of the people who reappeared after gone for a few days or a few weeks, and most of them don't remember anything. But it's just about knowledge.
So, if anyone that's listening to this may be sucked into a parallel universe, do you have any tips of how to get out?
Well, if they have the knowledge of the fact that there are parallel universes, then they would go back to their own path. Like when they entered, they can just come, like backtrack the path and then get out. But be careful, because the parallel universe, they're like spheres floating around in space. So they have to really be careful, because when they exit the sphere, they could be like in the middle of the air. So they could really fall on like 10 meters or 100 meters or something. So they really have to be a little careful on that point.
Interesting. Another question that I've always been fascinated by this, the Easter Island statues.
Yes.
How did the Theobians explain that?
Those were actually built by the people on the continent of Lemuria. Lemuria was a continent that sunk into the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, 14,500 years ago. The people on Lemuria actually came from another planet called Arimo X, and they had very advanced technologies such as anti-gravitational technologies, and they built these statues on Easter Island using anti-gravitational technologies and also ultrasonic vibrational systems to cut the statues in a precise manner. So that's why they were able to lift the stones, move the stones around, and then cut them in a way that we still cannot do using modern technologies. And they built the statues just to commemorate the people from Theoba, because at that time, the people from Theoba were in contact with them, because the Lemurians had a very evolved civilization. They didn't have money on that planet, because on that continent, because everyone just knew that not to take advantage of anyone or someone else. They have a market, and they just took what they wanted, not overtaking certain things, and they just knew how to live in a more evolved manner than us, because they knew that spiritual aspect is the most important aspect in one's life, not the material aspect of life.
Would that be similar? You mentioned earlier in the interview the pyramids in Egypt. What does the book say about that?
Yes, the Great Pyramid of Egypt was actually built by someone from Atlantis, another continent that sunk in ancient history. And that person was named Thoth, Thoth. He was a learned man from Atlantis, and he built a pyramid in about 8 or 9 years using the same technologies, the anti-gravitational technology and also ultrasonic vibrational systems to cut the stones of the pyramid. And the pyramid was built actually for the purpose of capturing cosmic rays or cosmic energy, because the pyramid is actually an energy center, not a tomb for the pharaohs, even though the pharaohs in ancient Egypt used the pyramid in the right way to communicate with people or ETs from other planets. They also used this pyramid or energy center to make rains, because with the special alloy, they could concentrate in the energy in a certain way that the rain could result at will. So there are actually recent researches done by certain scientists indicating that the pyramid is actually an energy center. And also there are ways to make rain by concentrating certain energy.
So interesting. Gosh, this book has an incredible wealth of information. I know the Theobians also talk about time travel. Do you mind discussing that?
Yes, they only briefly mentioned it. The book, remember, it was written in 1987, and it mentioned that it's well known that the US government had been trying to develop a time machine, and they failed. They had so far at that time they had not been successful because they focused too much on the frequency, not the vibrations. So they were actually trying to send a message to the US government at that time to develop a time machine. According to them, a time machine was actually could be developed if they could match the vibration of a cocoon. A cocoon is something that records everything that happens on a planet. It rotates the Earth 7 times the speed of light. And if that vibration can be matched, then we could travel back in time. And actually, there are some people who, after practice, could access the Akashic record to see what happened in the ancient past. And it's actually documented in the book by James Churchward, who wrote about the continent of Lemuria. And there was a segment in that book that writes about the author, James Churchward, visiting a temple in India in which a monk took him to his previous lives. I found that to be interesting when different books that have no relationship with each other match the stories.
Yes, I mean, gosh, it's fascinating. The author himself, Michael Desmarquet, was he ever contacted by the Theobians again?
According to him, I met him twice. Yes, they did telepathically, sending him messages. Just one aspect about the people from Theoba, they could perform all the miracles performed by Jesus Christ. They could levitate. They could materialize objects. They could send telepathic messages. They can shift their shapes, and they can actually do they can heal the different diseases, and they can foretell what's going to happen, but they can only tell the future 100 years, within 100 years of the future, not more than 100 years. I find that to be very interesting because the future is actually undetermined. It really depends on our actions, our conducts. And yeah, so that's about them. They also told him that he could reveal 2 things not written in the book. One thing was about the gray aliens, and the other thing was about the Sphinx near the Great Pyramid of Egypt.
Will you tell us?
Yes.
Okay.
So According to Michel Desmarquet, he spoke about the gray aliens in a public lecture in 1995. He said that the ETs told them, the Theobans told him that there were gray aliens, that's true. And they did implant certain objects on people on Earth, but not as many as some people believed. Only 150 people or so. And there's absolutely no worry about that because they have been monitoring the activities of the gray aliens just to make sure that they don't cause any harm or damage to us. The purpose of them implanting certain tracking devices is to monitor our activities to see how we respond to the decreasing or the uh, increasingly lack of immune system of our people on Earth, because according to them, since 1948, we had been in the process of losing our immune system, and they wanted to monitor us because they were also having the same problems. In that sense, they were dying species. They were also from Category 1 planet, in which a planet, according to the Theobans, is a planet of sorrows. So they're on the same level as us. So there's nothing to really envy about them. On the subject of the Sphinx, Michel Desmarquet or Michael Desmarquet was informed that there are three chambers beneath the Sphinx, and they contain very valuable information in which, if they're opened, then everything would be known to the people on Earth, and all the knowledge would be released. But it's not the time yet because we have to sort our problems out. When we are ready, then the learned person or the learned people can open the chambers beneath the Sphinx. Then at that time, you'll be like the start of the age of enlightenment.
So interesting. I have heard about the greys or the grey aliens, extraterrestrials, as people describe them, that they're not necessarily positive beings. And it's interesting you called them the planet of sorrows because they're a Category 1 planet. Are we considered a planet of sorrows as well?
Yes, especially unfortunately, the truth is sometimes hard to take. And look at what's happening around the world. We have increasingly like a lot of things happening around the world, the wars and also the pandemic. And it's really actually indicated in the book. It listed the four things that we need to fix. One thing is about money. So when you look at the wars that has happened around the world, is it really just the politicians, or is it something else or someone else? Is it the military-industrial complex? For what purpose? Is it for money, and that who gains from the wars? Everything comes down to money when you really dive into it. And the same thing happens with the pandemic. Is it really something that, I mean, if you look at that, a lot of the licensed medical doctors in the United States cannot voice their opinions out on certain subjects. Otherwise, they would be censored. If you really look into that, the alternative media and also some other platforms, you can find a lot of information. And the book, Theoba Prophecy, strongly suggests people to think independently and to research information that's not published or promoted by the mainstream media. We really need to look inside of ourselves. At the same time, also need to think independently and to search for knowledge, search for information. This is something that I've been doing, and being a Chinese translator and certified court interpreter, I have the advantage of getting to know certain information that normally the English-speaking population doesn't have the opportunity to read or to reach or to access. I find that to be very interesting that I'm speaking out on certain subjects. I'm encouraging people to research and to look into more the causes of the pandemic and what the government have been trying to do.
What were the other points that you mentioned of importance?
Um, the other important fact is that in the book, it really tells the people that there are small groups of people trying to take advantage of the public um, or the mass or the people. They're the financiers. And the book specifically mentioned that the hydrogen engine was invented long time ago already, but the technology has been suppressed by some of the large corporations because it would cause them to have a huge financial loss. If you think about it, if we use water as an energy source, then the oil companies would have no business anymore, and the governments would lose a lot of tax revenues from the the oil companies. And But this group of ETs has been trying to tell us that we need to start using hydrogen engines, otherwise our environment will take a huge irreversible toll.
Interesting. Was there one more point? Is that the fourth one?
Mhm. And and the last one is that it really focuses on the stories in the Bible because it listed the five specific church councils in which they intentionally distorted the meanings of the preachings of Jesus Christ. So this book is very interesting because it's very specific and people can do their own research to look up the facts and they will be astonished at their research if they really delve into that, because a lot of the topics mentioned in the book match the new evidence that's coming out. And for um, for the teachings of Jesus Christ, um, it's actually he actually told us to focus on the spiritual aspect of our life. We need to inside of ourselves, for the kingdom of God is within you. And it actually teaches us how to do that is through meditation and concentration, or by prayers, in a sense, because it's also a form of meditation, if you really think about that. And and that's actually something that people should look into that. When a person prays or a person meditates, they're actually communicating with their higher self. Higher self is actually is a very interesting concept or a very interesting fact written in the book. We have our physical body. We also have our spiritual body, which is also called the astral body. It's made of electrons, and the astral body or the spiritual body connects with our higher self through the cerebral canal, which is this portion of our brain. And when we meditate or when we pray, so they communicate and send or pass information to each other, and it would direct us to the purpose or the future directions of our life. It can also help us to solve our immediate challenges and giving us directions or answers. This is one way to communicate. The other way to communicate with our higher self is to have a good sleep, because night brings counsel. When a person sleeps, um, one can communicate with a higher self through dreams. This has been talked about by a lot of people and documented as well. So our higher self directs us or helps us to solve life challenges if we concentrate on specific issues. what I find interesting is that we have to get into a certain state of mind, of meditation, and then think about, ask for help in a positive way. For example, if I really want to have a beautiful wife, I would imagine what my ideal wife to be look like. And then I would think about that and request that she to request her to be present with me. And I think that's actually a very effective way of achieving or resolving certain immediate issues. And I can testify to that personally because in my personal life, when I was young, I had a lot of wishes, and so far they have all been come true.
Oh, do you have a beautiful wife?
I do. She's
Oh,
very
yay.
beautiful.
So it's almost focusing on imagining it to be there in some sense.
Yes,
Our
yes,
desires.
yes.
That's
And
yeah.
yes, and I really do think that when you think, you will have it, and but you really, technically speaking, you have to think about it in a certain way, in a positive way, in order to achieve the goal. And also, what Michael Desmarquet also mentions is that the higher self gives the answers only when it's helpful to you to grow spiritually. So when you pray or when you want to have $1 trillion or win the lottery, if it helps you to grow spiritually, then you're going to get it. If it doesn't, then you probably won't get an answer or result.
I've got one more question for you. You did mention before about the Theobians being able to see in the future up to maximum 100 years. Does that mean the future is set?
Well, in a way, yes. In a way, no. When we preview our lives before uh, we are born, we get to look at certain key points, key turning points in our lives, and then we decide whether to take it or not to take it. So in that sense, certain aspects of the life is fixed, but we also have free will. So it's like us looking at the ants on the ground. So we can see what's ahead of the ants walking towards a certain direction. But the ants also have their own free will of making a left turn or right turn to prevent from like hitting like a stone or river. So it's really up to the ants or up to us to decide which path to take in our lives. So we have our own free will. We have our own destination, and it's really up to our actions.
Gosh, Sam, I love you. You're so sweet, and I've asked so many questions. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with the Passion Harvest audience?
Yes, some people can see auras or human energy fields, and I think that's a very important skill because in this book it emphasizes the importance of being able to see auras and human energy fields because they affect our physical body. So, for example, when a person uh, has certain issues in their liver, the energy field around the liver would show certain abnormalities much faster, much earlier than the physical or the physiological aspect of the liver. So it's actually a warning signal for certain illness. So if a person can see auras or human energy fields, then that person would be able to foretell a lot of the physical illness or a lot of other things of that person. So I think that's a very interesting fact. And I'm in fact actually trying to develop aura camera And if anyone who can see auras have this kind of skill or talent or gift, please contact me because I need more data in order to come up with an algorithm. Yes. And there's one more thing. I
Yes,
know a lot of
please.
people.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are into astrology, and in this book, Michelle asked Tao or the Theobans about astrology, and the Theobans didn't respond. But in another book written by Michael Desmarquet, named titled "Nature's Revenge," he explained what astrology is actually about. Astrology works in a certain way because there are patterns that in the universe, and they're not necessarily dependent or changed or affected or influenced by the planets. They're just patterns of the universe. They happen to coincide with the locations of the planets. That's why people tend to believe that certain people with a certain astrological sign have certain aspects or certain characteristics. And the way that certain people have similar aspects is because of the electrons. It makes sense about that when we die, 81% of we have the astral body, which is made of electrons. So when we die, the 81% of the astral body or the electrons of the astral body goes back to the higher self. And then the 19% of the electrons flows around in nature until that person reincarnates. So what the planets or the patterns affect is the 19% of electrons that flows around in nature until one is reincarnated. So that's why some like astrology predictions have certain kind of validity, and there's an explanation on that. That's the effects of the electrons that have certain kind of patterns because at a certain point in time, the electrons would have certain aspects or certain characteristics that would affect the person who would be born in his or her next life.
And also, I mean, not always, but with astrology, they talk about the month that you're born, how it affects a personality. Or in
Yes,
Chinese astrology, there's the animals. Is that in relation to what you're talking about as well?
yes. For a certain month, the electrons would have certain characteristics that would affect the personalities of a person, or a certain specific date. So when people who are born at a specific location or at the same location or same time would have similar characteristics or certain similar personalities, but only to a certain extent because it only affects the 19% of electrons,
Right.
not the entire 100%.
That joins again with the other percentage that's returned.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. Thanks for explaining that. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Samuel, it's been such a delight to have you on Passion Harvest. What a wealth of information, and you're so passionate about all of this. I love it.
Thank you so much for having me here.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah,
Okay, bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye. If you liked this episode, please do subscribe for weekly passionate, inspirational interviews.